Well, good afternoon, everybody. Look at your neighbor and say it's a great day to be alive. Tell them it's a great day to be an American. All right, I start my presentations like that because I'm former military and I want to show appreciation to all of you that have worn the uniform. How many wore the uniform in here? Awesome, thank you. So I'll be speaking directly to you, but I'll be speaking to everybody. I'm Patrick Alcorn, and I'm the Senior Executive Director for what's called the Veterans Business Outreach Center. My program provides technical assistance, education, and training for servicemen and women in transition who are interested in starting a business in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Nevada. So I have 4 states that my office is responsible for. And I think that's it. That's it on my program?
That's perfect.
That'll do it.
That'll work. Hector, if you won't mind.
All right, well, good afternoon. My name is Hector Hernandez. I'm a market president for Truist. Truist is a large financial institution, 7th largest bank in the country. Been with them for, believe it or not, going on to 19 years. So I started when I was in high school, of course. That's a joke. I guess that didn't land well. Yeah, love what I do. Actually, my father and grandfather... My father and grandfather started their own business in New Mexico, and I can just remember the advice that he gave me was you have to find a trusted attorney, a trusted CPA, and a trusted banker. And so what I love about my job is I get to meet with all types of business owners, learn as much as I can about their business, and then craft a solution to help them grow their business. Thank you.
Nice job. Thank you, Gary.
All right, my name's Gary Forni. I'm the chairman of the Central Texas Angel Network. Before that, I was the CEO of a handful of startups. Before that, I worked at a number of enterprise-class technology companies. Central Texas Angel Network, which is why Joe asked me to participate, is the largest angel funder in Central Texas, well named. We've invested $129 million in 215 companies, and we've returned over 5x of that in capital back to our investors. So we have a very diligent process. We only invest in 2% of the companies that apply to us for investing. So I'll go over what are some of the things we look for, what are some things that are things we would never invest in. So you have a better sense of where you're going to come to me for equity financing, or you might go to Hector for debt financing as you grow your business.
Great. Thank you very much. And Gary, I'd like to kind of start with you. If you could, tell us a little bit about the difference between angel investors. Well, we understand the difference between debt finance and equity finance, but within the realm of equity finance, there's things such as venture capital, there's angel investors, there's private equity funds, those sort of things. Could you help us understand what the differences are there and how we and when should we be considered ready to actually reach out to that?
Sure. We all read in the paper about some small startup, 2, 3 guys and a dog getting $20 million to fund their business. That is such the exception as to be impossible. So you're reading that and they're printing that only because it's a very strange event. The reality is in the equity world, startups work such that some number of people come up with an idea. It could be 2 college kids in their dorm room, but frequently is actually a couple of 40-year-olds or 45 or 50-year-olds who come up with this idea because they have some domain expertise. And then they take that domain expertise and say, I'm going to solve this problem. And then they immediately apply to venture capitalists either in the Bay Area or in Boston or somewhere else for $5 million. And you know what happens? They get rejected. Because venture capitalists don't invest in 2 guys and a dog, right? They invest in companies that are going to be successful. And they can't tell if 2 guys and a dog are going to be successful. So what happens is there's a flow. Every time there's a flow. Those 2 college kids need to hit up Aunt Bertha and Uncle Tom for some money because those people will invest in the company whether it's a good idea or not. And nobody can tell if it's a good idea until they start getting some traction and moving along. And so we call that friends and family. Sometimes we call that friends, family, and fools. But in any case, they have to get some amount of money to get some traction and move their business along. Maybe they get their first customer. Maybe they have a proof of concept. They move their company along, and they can show, hey, this really is a good idea, or at least has the beginnings of a good idea. And that's when angel investors get involved, because angel investors are just individuals. Central Texas Angel Network's 120 members who invest their own money in the deals, right? They make their own decisions. And they'll put in $25,000, $50,000, $100,000, but together our average is we put in $650,000 to $700,000 in each deal. We put that early money in, so it's not the friends, family, and fools. We have a very disciplined process. I said 1% to 2% of every deal we look at. We put that early money in to help you get to the next level. And when you get to the next level, you have some customers, and you'll have some proof that, yeah, it is a good idea. And that's when venture capitalists get involved. That's when you get $5, $10, $20, $50 million, because they can see that this is going to be a home run and they want to get on board. But after you get that money, then you're going to want to sell your company eventually, and that's where private equity comes in. They don't mess around with companies unless you have $5 million in revenue. That's a big number. It takes a long time to get to $5 million in revenue. When you get $5 million in revenue, then PE says, hey, that seems like there's a cash flow opportunity there. I'd like to buy them. And so that's how each step plays in the funding space. Friends and family, angels, VCs, PEs. That's how the equity world works.
There was a couple of things that you mentioned in there that I think I'd like to maybe try to get some clarification on. One of them you mentioned was proof of concept. Could you kind of expound on that a little bit in terms of what is proof of concept when it comes to innovation?
Yeah, I certainly can. That's a great question, Joe. So I have an office in Capital Factory. I sit there, I leave the door open all day long. Young people, I'll stop calling them kids. Young people wander in and out all the time. And that's intentional. I want them to do that. And they tell me the most amazing ideas, which I don't have the heart to tell them, yeah, the probability of that working is just like 0. So what I do is like, well, you need to go get a customer, because it might work, it might not work, but the best proof of concept is get a customer. Because if somebody's willing to pay for it, then it's a damn good idea. Mm-hmm. If somebody's not willing to pay for it, then it's not a good idea. And so proof of concept could be anything from get your first customer to get somebody to use it, even if they don't pay for it. I mean, just use it for free is a good start. Mm-hmm. Downgrading from that, having a demo that actually works. You can't believe how many demos I've looked at that just broke halfway through the demo, right? So, it takes a while to move up that scale of an idea to some software, some hardware, a food product. Doesn't really matter what the startup is. That somebody can say, oh, I'd like to buy that. Every time you remove risk from the table, I'm more excited. And so I especially am excited when it's a disruptive technology, something that's really going to change the world. I want to be part of something that's going to change the world. But proof of concept is remove risk from the table. Prove it works, mm-hmm. At least a little bit.
Yeah, and the other word you used was traction. And when do you know that you've got the right level of traction before you start looking at investors?
I'd like to say that this is a science, and there are certain metrics you hit and certain things happen. The reality is there's art to the deal, mm-hmm. Right? And so people who are persuasive and who can sell their idea need a lot less customers and traction, because they can communicate the vision. People who struggle to communicate an idea, they need a lot more traction, because I need to be able to see it from the numbers, not just the discussion. So I can't give you the answer to that, but as was mentioned earlier, having paying customers, nothing beats having paying customers, because that is the ultimate, because that's all of our goal, right? Technology is great. If you create new technology, wonderful, exciting, go do that. But if nobody's willing to pay for it, then you really haven't done anything worthwhile.
And you and I had a discussion previously about disruptive technology, and what does and so what does the term disruptive technology mean? Because I think understanding that you may have something that's it's going to be a solution to a problem, but just how big of a solution is it, and how does that tie into disruptive technology?
Yeah, so I love the fact I'm sitting next to Hector, because Hector is doing debt financing, right? And so if you're building a business that's competing with a business across the street, and your product is 5% bigger, better, or your store is 10% bigger, that's something that you will be able to exploit and gain extra traction and money. But you will never get an investment from me for that, because 5% and 10% are not the realms of numbers I need to deal with. I deal with X. You need to be 10X better than the competition, right? You need to be disruptive. I don't care if 10X, you're 10X faster, 10X smaller, 10X cheaper. Any one of those is an order of magnitude better than the competition. If you have an order of magnitude advantage, that's a real advantage. That's an advantage even I can understand. And so if you miss forecast and you're off by 20% or 50%, oh, now you're only 5X better than the other guy. Well, you know what? That's still good. So disruptive in my mind is you're 10X better. Things will break along the way and change along the way, but good things are in your future when you're 10X better than the competition.
Great, thanks. Hector, would you mind telling us a little bit about what it is that you do and what the services of the bank, and how does debt finance play a role in growing a business?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Truist, really our mission is to help our clients grow financially, understand their business, really grow with them and be an advocate, but not only an advocate, but a consultative advisor. So to Gary's point, really what we're looking for is a client that's looking to grow. We're not worried about the multiple. So, quick story, we've got a fabricator who was looking to expand. So this is where I think trusted advisors, surrounding yourself with trusted advisors is key. He wanted to expand his warehouse facility and buy some additional equipment for expansion. He went to his insurance agent, wanted to know what that would do from a premium perspective. We were introduced via the insurance agent. We connect with the client. We build rapport. We put together equipment finance guidance line, right? Nothing too sexy there. But where I think the value is we're getting introduced from the insurance agent. We then work with the insurance agent. We get introduced to the design team that's helping our client relook at the floor. A lot of our people are not willing to borrow large amounts of money right now based where the rates are today, but they're looking at how can I get more efficient, right? So we work with the design team to say, hey, well, how much do you think in equipment that they're actually going to need? How much in improvements are they actually going to need? So that will determine the guidance line amount. That same design team was able to refer this client to a different equipment manufacturer who was able to provide more efficient equipment that would reduce the labor costs. So working together as a team for this client is really what our goal is, to get them in front of a different network of people to achieve their goals.
And part of our conversation previously too was about sort of challenging your banker, and because I know that I've had some experiences where the banker probably didn't have the level of business acumen to be able to understand what my business was about. And could you speak on that a little bit, if you could?
Sure, no, absolutely. So look, I could call on the same industry for 20 years and get pretty darn dangerous with that industry and understand it to a certain extent, but I'll never be as good as the business owner. And so one of our strategies at Truist is we have industry consultant specialists. That is all they do. They live and breathe these 14 overarching different industries. There's a total of 35 subsectors within those industries. But we get those people involved. We introduce them to our clients. So I may not be an expert in semiconducting. I might not be an expert in all the fabrication industries that are out there. But when we get this person involved, they speak the same language. They understand. We add value immediately. We get credibility. And then we can take that same knowledge and get with our underwriters to explain why this makes sense and how we can help our client.
So I'm going to throw you a curveball here. The building a banking relationship is very critical to the growth of the business, the life of the business through. When's it time to build that relationship? How do you think that businesses, the approach they should take in building a relationship with their banker? Could you give me some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so look, there's a lot of banks in town. In Texas, I tell people there's as many banks as there are churches. So plenty of banks on every corner. I think really and truly, you need to get your banker involved early and often. The better we understand the business owner's long-term goals, what they need financing for, how they plan to execute their strategy, the better prepared we are to help that client. And so, at the minimum, customer service should be at the forefront of that relationship. There should absolutely be guidance from the banker on the proper financial products, whether it's treasury management, foreign exchange, the correct loan facility for them, a line of credit versus a term loan. And then I think really on the banker, it should fall on proactive outreach. They should be able to get in contact with their client, understand what they're doing. And so part of our strategy at Truist here is what we do is we call it Truist Business Insights. So we meet quarterly, monthly, semi-annually, whatever the client wants or prefers. And we build a roadmap. It's a strategic roadmap of where they want to be in the next 3 to 5 years. A lot of times, some of my longer-term relationships develop into, bigger company size and then potentially exit strategies for that company owner. And so what we can also do is collect financials along the way. So as they're getting ready, they're saying, hey, look, rates are too high now, but in 3 years, I want to be able to buy my own building. What do you need to see to be able to do that? And that's where we get together, we look at those financials, we set benchmarks, we talk about the goals, how we can help, and then sometimes it's just introductions. So those same industry consultants that we use, they might have a client base or a network that they can introduce our client to. So we had a distillery out here in Texas that was looking to get connected with some distributors in other states. Joe Good, who is our beverage consultant, was able to put those connections together. While they're not immediate, at least they've got connections into that market, and as they continue to grow, they'll be able to tap into that.
Yes,
Two
that's
quick
good.
caveats
Sure.
to Hector's response there. The first one is, don't wait until you need a banker to find a banker, right? So that's the first. Don't wait until you need one to find one. It's like homeowners insurance, right? You can't go get insurance after the house is on fire, right? The second one is, you don't have a banker simply because you walked into the bank and opened up a business account. You don't have a banker until you actually walked into the bank and you went over and you shook Hector's hand and said, hey, Hector, my name's Patrick Alcorn. I just opened up a new bank account here in your bank. I provide technical assistance, education, and training for folks who are interested in starting a business. I don't know if I need anything from you right now, but I just wanted to introduce myself and let you know who I am. That's how you start and begin that banking relationship from day one when you open up that account. Does that make sense?
I think there's a story that I can tell on that because I'm a serial entrepreneur, in case you all didn't know, and one of the businesses is that I had, I developed a perspective on bankers that there's the porcelain cup banker and there's the styrofoam cup banker. He said, every time I did a draw and I brought money to the bank, I was sitting in front of the banker's desk with a porcelain cup of coffee. Every time I had to make payroll, I was standing at the doorway of the bank and I had a styrofoam cup of coffee. But my perspective was transactional. I didn't realize that the value is relational. And so when you build the relationship with a banker, you're building relationships. So it's not just a transactional agreement. It's truly a relationship from beginning to end. And once I made that transition, things went so much smoother for me because I had phone calls that says, how are you doing? Are you going to make a draw? If you're not going to make a draw, what do you need? Yeah, difference, very, very different than a transactional approach. So thank you for that. I think that's excellent. One of the things that I wanted to try to identify or help us identify is the critical elements. What do you see as the critical elements of becoming a bankable client?
So we have what we call business lifecycle advisory. So there's a home for everyone at Truist, whether it's a startup to exiting the business. But to become bankable, if you mean lending, then really that's where we need to get together, look at financials, understand projections. It could be an SBA loan that is needed to, offset a collateral shortfall or an equity shortfall. But I think it starts with the conversation. It's trying to understand what you're trying to do, where you're trying to go. But more importantly, I think it's really, at the end of the day, do you have traction, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Well, Patrick, let me ask you now, because you are heading up what I think is a very important program in the state of Texas, and particularly because you are focused on our veterans who are veteran entrepreneurs. And I would like for you to give us some insight on the VBOC program and the value that it's bringing and some of the successes that it's had, so that the veterans in the group would understand the resources that are set aside specifically for them. So.
Okay. So before I answer that, I got a chance to see where the veterans were in the room, but I want to throw this out there as well. I'm not just the Veterans Business Outreach Center, but I'm a U.S. Small Business Administration resource partner. So in essence, I'm the SBA, but I'm the SBA for veterans, right? So I do everything the SBA does, except I only do it for the military-connected community. So my answer is going to be related to all SBA,
Perfect.
but I'll pinpoint the veterans as well. Before I do that, I want to find out, what's the stages of businesses that are in this room right here? How many of you are just kicking tires and thinking about starting businesses? Show of hands. How many of you have existing businesses right now? Okay, how many of you are in the startup phase? Okay, super. Just kind of give me some idea right here. And so the Veterans Business Outreach Center program is a program that's sponsored by the U.S. Small Business Administration to help servicemen and women start and or grow businesses. Many of you don't know this, but the SBA was founded over 75 years ago, and it was founded because after World War II, 50% of the folks coming out of the military after World War II started businesses, and they had no idea how to get these businesses started. So the president at that time started the U.S. Small Business Administration for the sole purpose of helping servicemen and women start businesses. Today, the SBA helps everyone who's interested in starting businesses, and they do that through 3, maybe 4 different paths. And we call it the 3 C's and a D. The first C is through counseling. So all the training and education that you need to get your business up and running and understand how to be a better business owner, the SBA provides resources for you to do that. The Veterans Business Outreach Center, which is my center, we only counsel and provide business advice for veterans and military spouses and active duty service members. But there's the Women's Business Center, which is another SBA resource partner that does the exact same thing we do with a focus on women and specific women resources. And then you have the Service Corps Retired Executives, that's what they used to call them. They just call themselves SCORE now. These are mentors. There are about 11,000 of these folks nationwide who stand side by side with you for free to mentor you and walk you through the business development and business establishment process. And then the same thing that Joe is responsible for, the Small Business Development Center, right? This is a group of business advisors on community college campuses and college campuses all across the nation who help you to get your business up and running. So that's a full resource partner network, and included in that network is access to capital partners. So what we call community development corporations, or CDCs, community development financial intermediaries, CDFIs. These are lenders, nonprofit lenders, and then also banks and so forth that make available to you SBA products. The SBA is not the lender. The money's not coming from the SBA except in a disaster scenario. The money's coming from the actual lender, from Truist. So that's the lender, but they partner with the SBA so the SBA can come in and guarantee that loan. If you default on a domestic loan, SBA will cover up to about 85% on a domestic loan, up to 95% on an international loan and so forth. So that makes Hector more willing to give you some money, because he knows if you default, if he gets 15% collateral from you up front, 15% down up front, and you default, he can collect 85% from the SBA, and he's still made whole, right? So that makes it easier for him to do business with you and to give you access to capital. So this program that I have, the Veterans Business Outreach Center program, It mirrors all of the other organizations that I named. And what we do is the C is the counseling. The second C that we do is contracting. The largest purchaser of goods in the entire world is the U.S. federal government and its agencies. In order to make the federal government and its agencies one of your customers, that process is called contracting, right? So if you have a product or service that's purchased by the federal government or any of its agencies, you need to figure out how to get into the contracting system, right? And trust me, they buy everything. $600 billion worth of goods and services purchased last year alone, right? So our job is to help you make these government agencies one of your customers. We call that contracting. We have matching events where we'll take your business and your profile, and we'll look at the government agencies' profiles, and we'll match you guys together where you can have those conversations and say, hey, I sell beans and bullets, you buy beans and bullets, let's have a conversation. Or whatever the case may be in terms of what your product or service is. The third C is the one that's sitting here on this panel, is access to capital. And again, I already mentioned that the SBA is not the lender, but the SBA makes it more likely that the lenders will give you access to that capital because of the guarantees that they place behind it. The fourth item is one that everybody now knows the SBA for, and that's disaster assistance, right? We had COVID-19 hit in 2020, and all of a sudden, everybody in America knows who the SBA is. Well, the SBA has been around for 70 years, right? There were disasters in small pockets across the U.S. everywhere, and they were learning at that time who the SBA was and what the SBA does. All of you learned who the SBA was when COVID-19 hit because it impacted every last one of you. But disaster assistance loans have always been there. Other types of recovery programs to help you make it through a disaster scenario. In fact, in every disaster, FEMA shows up, and the SBA shows up and parks their camper right next door to FEMA and the Federal Emergency Management Administration. The FEMA and SBA stand side by side to help not only business owners, but homeowners get back up and running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. I appreciate that. I wanted to, a couple of questions here. When is it best to seek outside funding for your business? When is that, when do you know when it's the right time?
It's interesting because I think that Greg answered that question right up front. Don't come ask for my money if you don't have any skin in the game, right? That's what the banker's saying, that's what the investor's saying, everybody's saying that. Don't ask for money unless you have skin in the game. But the best time to ask for money is not when you need money. You should already have a strategy and you should already have a plan in place that already told you in advance, I know when I get to month number 27, I'm gonna have a cash flow issue, so I'd better be asking for money back here. I know when I get to month 33, I'm gonna have a cash flow issue, I'm gonna have this issue, I wanna buy this piece of equipment. You should have a plan way back here that says when you're gonna need money out there. You don't wait until the fire starts in your business and all of a sudden you go outside and say, I need to go get some access to capital. I'm a certified facilitator for a program called Profit Mastery. And Profit Mastery is a program that helps you, the business owner and bankers as well, better understand how to make decisions based upon what the financial statements say. You don't get to shoot from the hip and say, I want to add another employee. You don't get to shoot from the hip and say, I think I need another truck, or I want to get some more space, or purchase more inventory. The program Profit Mastery teaches you how to look at your income statement, your balance sheet, and your profit and your cash flow statement, and look at those three things in advance, right? Look at them and say, you know what? I know right about here, in this month right here, if I add an employee, that employee needs to bring in X amount of dollars in sales in order for me to pay him that amount of salary. Well, what is that number? You as a business owner need to know what that number is. If I'm gonna purchase more inventory, what's your inventory turnover? How fast is that inventory going out the door versus that's cash sitting on your shelf because you spent that money sitting on that inventory? Those are the numbers that you need to know. Your bookkeeper's writing stuff in the books, right? But your bookkeeper's not making business decisions for you. Your tax advisor is writing things in the book and making sure you're paying the proper amount of taxes, but they're not making business decisions for you. You have to be able to look at your financials and make business decisions and know in advance, I'm gonna need $343,833.17 right here. I need to start going out there and asking for it. You guys want to add anything to that?
Absolutely. So you talked about profit mastering. I haven't participated in that program, but what it sounds like is it's tied to KPIs and stats of the business so that you know how your business is doing as business managers. And it sounds like a program designed to focus you on your stats. Everything we engage with, what is your margin? What is your revenue? What is your gross margin? And you can actually tie increasing your headcount, increasing your capital costs based on what is your cost of goods sold, et cetera. So as you know your stats, your bookkeeper becomes your best friend, right? You need to know how your business is running, and you need to know how it's running every month, and that's a serious meeting with your accountant, is what is going on in my business right now?
Yeah, and I would add that, that's exactly why SBDC and SCORE are great resources to help, guide you through that process. I can remember a startup that we asked projections for, and they basically said, hey, so you want me to make something up? And no, that is not what we want you to do. You really need to understand your business. To Patrick's point, we need to understand where you're going to have a capital shortfall. How did you get to these numbers? Imagine like it's, on Shark Tank, basically.
Yeah, Profit Mastery is a very valuable tool for us. It has been with the SBDC since 2008 when I brought it on board, and I'm sure it's been at SBDCs elsewhere. But we are able to help you develop a monthly scorecard. So at the end of every month, we know exactly where you stand financially. You'll know exactly where you stand financially. And as Patrick said, you can make the right decisions now because you have information that you didn't have before. And what's interesting is that you keep an eye on how your financial ratios are moving. That tells you what you need to do. It's a process of learning the cause and effect. If there's a number that's out of alignment in your scorecard, what does that mean? What action steps do I need to take to correct that sort of thing? So it's a really valuable tool, and I've been a proponent of that for a very long time. And it's going through some changes now because Steve Lefevre sold the business, and we got new leadership, and we're trying to learn what the new direction of the program is going to be. But I will tell you that I looked for a financial tool like this for over 20 years, and when I finally found it, I grabbed it and held on to it because I think it's very, very valuable to you all to go through that. You don't have to have a financial mind. You don't even have to have ever been exposed to finance in your life. You can go through this and you'll come to a greater understanding of what those financial statements mean. So that you're not just getting it and sticking it in a drawer. You're getting it, you're processing it, you're making decisions off of it. So I think that's a critical piece.
Joe, a quick add-on on that. If you'll Google Profit Mastery, just like it sounds, Profit, M-A-S-T-E-R-Y, Profit Mastery, I think it's .net. But they also have a software that's associated with, I'm not selling this stuff, I'm just sharing best practices with you. They have a software called Profit Gap. And the software will do all the calculations for you. But I think it's one thing to trust the software to do the calculations. It's more important for you as the business owner to understand your business, right? You really need to understand your business. It's not enough for you to own your job. You need to own the business and understand your business and know what trends are happening in your business and what's going on in your business and what are your key performance indicators and the things that are going to keep you alive and moving forward.
And with that, could you talk a little bit about, how Profit Mastery helps you determine the type of capital, the level of capital that you really need?
Yeah, so it uses what they call financial ratios. So every business fits into some industry classification. We call it the North American Industry Classification System, NAICS. And that's how the government keeps statistics on all the business that are out there. And so they can tell you, if you're $1 million business, let's just use a restaurant for instance, and I'm making these numbers up. These numbers don't apply to the restaurant. I'm just kind of giving you an example. Let's just say you own a restaurant. They have data that will show you that if you own a restaurant, your payroll in a restaurant shouldn't be more than 36% of your business. I just made that number up, right? Shouldn't be more than 36% of your business. So if you do $100,000 in sales in your restaurant, everything's compared to sales. If you do $100,000 of sales in your restaurant, you shouldn't be paying out more than $36,000 on payroll, right? It'll tell you food costs should be 23%. So if you do $100,000 in sales in your restaurant, again, I just made these statistics up. Don't trust the numbers that I'm giving you, just to understand the concept. If you do $100,000 in sales in your restaurant, then your food cost should be 23%. Those numbers that I'm referring to these are ratios, and we have ratios in every industry for different parts of the industry. And you can look at that and you can see what directions your ratios are going. If in this month you had labor cost was 36%, and the next month your labor cost went up to 42%, and then the next month your labor cost went up to 57%, you're keeping people on the clock too long. You need to notice that. You need to notice why is your labor cost going up? Either your sales are not going up concurrently, or you're keeping people on the clock too long. You need to get some folks off the clock. Understanding that and understanding that level of your business by looking at those ratios is the same way that you make those financial decisions. You can look at other financial ratios in your business, quick ratio, otherwise known as an asset ratio. You can look at inventory turnover, how fast is your inventory actually being sold versus sitting on the shelf. Because you spend $100,000 on inventory, make it more simple for you. You spend $10,000 on inventory, that's $10,000 of cash that you could have used to pay a bill, to pay an employee, to do whatever else you want with it. Instead, it's just sitting here on the shelf just not being sold. Well, if you knew that your inventory turnover was faster than that, maybe you do just-in-time inventory, or order the inventory so you have just enough to get through where you're going, and then order the next bulk of inventory. All those decisions come directly off your financial statement. You can look at your ratios, and your ratios will tell you, I need to order more inventory by this time. I can add another employee here. I can expand my space here. Does that answer the question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so there's a couple of things, too, that Hector, I'd like to speak with you about, is the DSR and the equity position of businesses. The debt service ratio, one of the ratios that Patrick's talking about, shows the ability of a business to service its debts through cash flow. And how important that is to understand where you are at any given point in time. Patrick, could you talk on, Hector, could you talk on that a little bit if you would?
Yeah, sure. Well, but before that, I wanted to add to Patrick's commentary. My shameless plug is, so Truist Business Insights, what I talked about earlier, we look at those same ratios so we can take those financials and based on that code for your business, we can compare where you are at in that certain point in time to someone else that's in the same industry, right? So just a value add there. But the debt service coverage is pretty important, right? That's how you cash flow, how you pay your debt. So you know the simple calculation is you're looking at what's available to cover your debt, and then you're taking all your loan payments and obligations, multiplying that out for the year because it's all based on an annual basis. Typically, we're looking at a 1.25 times coverage. So for every dollar in debt, you've got $1.25 coming in cash flow. But those are, depending on the situation, depending on the loan type or the structure, that could be a little bit lower, that could be a little bit higher if there's not collateral, right? If it's something that, hey, it's a little bit riskier to the bank because if something happens to this loan, we don't have a sufficient way to cover our loss, then maybe we would require a higher debt service coverage. Maybe we require less debt service coverage if we've got an asset like a building that's got plenty of equity in the building. Then maybe we could stretch and get closer to like a one times coverage or a 1.1 times coverage. And then equity is important as far as, I assume you're talking about like equity injection into.
Well, the importance of maintaining an equity position throughout the operation of the business, because having an equity position at the beginning qualifies you for the loan, but what happens as the business grows, if the equity position doesn't grow, you have diminishing opportunity to access to capital because of not maintaining the equity.
Yeah, for sure. And we see that a lot. So a lot of times, like, a quick example would be quick depreciation of equipment assets, right? Mm-hmm. So you'll see on their balance sheet that, it ends up being like a negative tangible net worth. And so then we have to look at the individual and say, okay, does this person have enough strength because the business, there's a negative tangible net worth there, and so it's not as strong or doesn't appear to be as strong from an equity perspective. But also, it's something to think about into the future. you definitely want to have equity in the business, because if you're going to sell your business, it's hard to sell a business that has negative equity, right? That's going to be hard to get someone interested in buying that.
And so you guys are clear on that. This is what he just said that shows up on your balance sheet. Your balance sheet is your net worth as a business. And on one side, you got everything that you own, your assets, and the other side, everything that you owe, which is your liabilities, plus owner's equity. And that owner's equity, you want that number to continually be increasing on that side of the balance sheet, right?
And I'd like to end on a note with you, Gary. You know, innovation is about solutions. How do you go about addressing problems and solutions, and whether or not they're valid solutions to a problem, or they're competitive solutions to a problem, or those kind of things? What makes them stand out?
I like that you're just making these questions up real time and
Yeah.
throwing them out here. So, a lot of times in new technologies, I'll see a founder and they'll come in and they'll say, I have no competitor. Nobody else is working on this. And I can tell you without a doubt, that statement is always wrong. Mm-hmm. There's always an alternative. Sometimes the alternative isn't obvious. Sometimes it's not a fancy technology. Sometimes the alternative is doing nothing, accepting the existing solution. And for many times, that is the better solution because it costs nothing and you don't have to change any process. You can use the existing systems. So how do you determine if it's the right solution? Well, you know, Patrick and I were both laughing at the start of this because the most valid proof is somebody wants to pay money for it. You know, somebody wants to buy it from you. So that's a certain validation of a technology. But it really becomes a drill down, for me at least, and for all of my peer angel members, as well as any of the venture capitalists, it always comes down to, we look at a number of aspects of a startup, right? One, every startup pitch I've ever seen, if they're a young entrepreneur, they start with 20 pages or PowerPoint slides or whatever about their product. And that is always the wrong thing to do. The first thing you have to do is impress me with the magnitude of the problem. So explain to me why this is a problem, and explain to me why some customer out there, some customer out there would kill to have this problem solved. Why is this one of their top 3 problems in life for their business, and you're going to make their job easier? You do that, you have a good start to a solution, right? And so then we'll drill into and we'll look at the competition, because there's always competition. I guarantee I can find somebody. And I guarantee I can find somebody I know or somebody in my network knows who works at that company, and I can find out the real story. We also like to look at, you know, the underlying core of the technology. We'll drill down into the core of the technology. We'll drill down into the people. Do you have the right people into the business? If just because somebody came up with an idea doesn't mean they're automatically the CEO. That might not be the right role for them, right? They might be a great salesperson. And by the way, frequently a small startup CEO is the company's best salesperson. Maybe they'd be better as the salesperson. We bring in somebody else to do the day-to-day CEO tasks, and we go out and have them evangelize the world. So all of these aspects of the people, the technology, the competition, the customers, all of these come together, and certainly the finance, and the number one thing I didn't even talk about, the business model. What is the business? How do you make money? I think you all think of Facebook, say, great, he came out with this software. For years and years and years it was free. It was never obvious how he was ever going to make money, right? But he makes tons of money through ads, right? From the data he's gathered, he's now able to monetize that through ads. So what is the business model? Sometimes it's not obvious. And by the way, if the business model isn't obvious and you're using a piece of product, I can almost always guarantee that you're part of the business model. Somehow you or your data or something going on is part of that business model. You need to recognize that. So lots of components to validate a technology.
So real quickly on validating technology and the business model, do most of you know that Uber never made a profit, never reported positive profits until, I think it's the 4th quarter of 2023?
Just recently.
I mean, just recently. They've been in existence for how long? What, 12 years or something like that? And they've never reported a profit. In fact, they reported millions and millions of dollars in loss, billions. I think.
Yeah, sorry,
billions of dollars in losses, year over year over year over year. but it's something about the problem that they solve that keeps everybody invested in them. Remember this if you don't remember anything else. Business is about solving problems. The more problems you solve for, the more people that you solve it for, the longer your business is going to exist and the more value you're going to bring to the world around you.
Yeah.
Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate your work there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, everyone. I want to open it up to questions. I believe we have enough time for 2. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. Yes, ma'am?
So, as a startup, what about grants? Is there anything we can do to find grants and things when we don't have the capital yet to go to you guys?
I'm going to jump in real quickly and answer that question for you. You got to remember this. First of all, grants are public dollars, right? They're taxpayer dollars. I'm not paying my taxes so you can make a profit, right? So in general, grants are not for for-profit businesses, they're for non-profit business. But if I'm a for-profit and I want a grant, I have to align my business with the problem of the grant-making institution. If the grant-making institution has a problem they're trying to solve, they will give free money for it. For example, there's something called historically underutilized business zones, hub zones. The city has hub zones all around it where nobody wants to go and build a business. But the city wants the whole city to have economic prosperity. So they will give you a grant if you put your business in that zip code. That's public dollars that they'll give you. Why? Not so you can make a profit. They're giving you money because you're solving their problem. They can't convince anybody to put a business in that community. So for grants, anytime you're looking for grants, all your public grants are going to be on grants.gov. Don't let somebody sell you some idea that they can go out and find grants for you. If they're public grants, they're going to be on grants.gov or at your local community, whatever level you is, the county's grant site, the city's grant site. Every one of these organizations have their own grant. For private grants, it's the same thing. And I'll give an example real quickly for the veterans. The Samuel Adams. Samuel Adams gives a $100,000 grant every year for folks who are interested in starting a business in the beverage industry. Now, why would Samuel Adams give away $100,000 to a for-profit business? The beverage industry, if the beverage industry goes up, what happens to Samuel Adams? Samuel Adams goes up. So you're helping Samuel Adams to solve this problem of growing the beverage industry. That's why they give out money. We do a conference every year in October. We give away $40,000 in free grant money. Why am I giving away this grant money? Because I'm wanting to see veterans, military spouses start business, so we give away that money. So you line your business mission with the mission of the grant issuing authority. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
All right. Is there one more question? No? Going once? Going twice? All right. Well, I just want to once again thank our moderator and speakers for taking the time out of their days to participate as panelists and to share their insights on access to finance and funding. Please give them one more round of applause.